The sound that ruined me wasn't a scream or a slap. It was the soft clink of metal as he picked up his keys. That gentle little jingle. Cheerful, even, right after I told him to listen or leave. He left. No slammed door, no angry speech, not even a sarcastic glance back. Just the keys, a deep breath, and silence. The worst part? I said it in front of everyone. His sister, my cousin, our friends, his coworkers, even his mom. That stupid dinner was supposed to be our compromise night. We'd agreed on it during couples therapy, a joint dinner to reconnect. Talk about boundaries, celebrate small wins. I had even written "no drama" on a sticky note inside my purse as a reminder. But that didn't stop me, did it? I don't even know what triggered me. Maybe it was the way he smiled at Cheryl during the toast. Or maybe it was the look on his face when I tried to joke about the dishes. That fake little chuckle he does when he's annoyed, but too polite to say it. So I snapped. Right there at the table. Right after dessert. I'm not gonna say this again, Everett. Either actually listen to what I'm saying for once, or just leave. I said it with my wine glass in hand like I was some powerful movie character. I even heard a few forks pause on plates. Everett looked at me for about 3 seconds. No words. He just reached for his keys, stood up, gave a quick polite nod to the room like he was excusing himself from a business meeting, and walked straight out the front door. Gone. People tried to act normal. My aunt coughed. Someone muttered something about tension, but all I could do was sit there, sweating through my dress, wondering how I'd let it come to this. The worst part is, he didn't come home that night, or the next, and when I finally worked up the courage to check our shared calendar, I saw a new event added for Sunday afternoon. Pick up the rest of my things. That's when my stomach dropped, because I thought I'd pushed him, sure, but I never imagined I'd actually pushed him away for good, and I definitely didn't expect what came next. I didn't sleep that night, or the one after. I kept expecting to hear the garage door, or his footsteps in the hallway, or that little throat-clearing sound he makes before entering a room. Nothing. Just the low hum of our refrigerator and the ticking of that cursed wall clock he bought on our anniversary. The one I always hated for being too loud and too ugly, but suddenly now sounded like a countdown to some ending I couldn't stop. By the third morning, I caved. I opened our bedroom closet, and my knees nearly buckled. His half was gone. The right side. All the hangers were still there, like skeletons stripped of their purpose. Even the ugly red flannel he wore when grilling? Gone. His colognes? Gone. The drawer where he kept mismatched socks and receipts from gas stations? Empty. It wasn't cleaned, it was cleared. And that's a different kind of devastation, because it means he planned it. He didn't storm out in rage. He walked out in resolve. I texted him. Something pathetic like, "Can we please talk?" He left it on read. Of course he did. The same man who used to call me 3 times in a row if I didn't answer within 5 minutes was now ignoring me like I was a spam caller. And then it got worse. I remembered the calendar event. Pick up the rest of my things. It was still there, set for Sunday. But the part that made my stomach twist was the location. He didn't write home or our house. He wrote an address, one I didn't recognize. At first I thought it was a mistake, or maybe a storage unit. So I did what any panicking, spiraling, emotionally imploding spouse would do. I copied the address into Google Maps. It was a condo building, across town, near the river walk. Fancy, new, the kind of place people get when they want a fresh start. I know I should have stopped there, closed the laptop, gone for a walk, called a friend. But instead, I clicked deeper. The real estate listing, the complex website, floor plans, reviews, and that's when I saw it. In the gallery, right between the rooftop lounge and the gym photo, was an image of the model unit, with Everett in the background. I swear I stopped breathing. There he was, casual, relaxed, talking to someone just out of frame, wearing that navy pullover I bought him last Christmas, the one he said made him feel like himself. He didn't look like a man crashing on a couch. He looked like someone who'd already started a new chapter. How long had he been planning this? How long had I been the only one thinking we were still trying? I zoomed in on the photo, tried to see who he was talking to. The angle cut it off, but the shape of the shadow, it looked feminine. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not rage, not heartbreak, something colder. I had to know the truth, and if Everett wouldn't talk to me, I'd find someone who would. I know what you're thinking. I should have left it alone. Should have accepted the silence and let him go gracefully. But nothing about what he did was graceful. He vanished like I was a mistake he regretted, like 6 years of memories could be packed into 2 duffel bags and tossed in the trunk without a second glance. No, I wasn't going to be erased like that, especially not after the photo I saw. Him smiling, relaxed, like a man who hadn't just left me crying into a throw pillow in the same living room where we used to plan vacations and argue over which pizza toppings were non-negotiable. I waited until Sunday. I dressed like I wasn't unraveling, tried to make my hair look deliberate, not like I'd been yanking it in stress all week. Drove across town in silence. No music, just the rising panic in my chest. I parked 3 blocks away from the address on his calendar, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I didn't even have a plan. I just knew I had to see who he was with. I stood in front of Unit 5B for almost a full minute before I knocked. No answer at first. I almost turned around. But then, the door creaked open. She was barefoot, maybe mid-30s. Hair in a messy bun. No makeup, just a giant navy blue pullover that hung down to her thighs. My pullover. Everett's pullover. I stared at it like it had personally betrayed me. She blinked like she wasn't expecting anyone. "Can I help you?" My voice cracked. "Is Everett here?" She tilted her head. "He's not. Are you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stood there like a confused ghost. She stepped aside and motioned toward the couch. "Do you want to come in?" And like an idiot, I did. Everything inside looked lived in. Not new. Not temporary. There were pictures on the shelf. Shoes by the door. A half-eaten sandwich on the coffee table. It wasn't a crash pad. It was a home. One he never mentioned. One he must have had ready for weeks, maybe longer. She poured me water like we were old friends. I finally managed to speak. "How long have you and Everett?" She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, no. We're not together. God, no." It took me a second. "But, the shirt." She looked down. "Oh, no. This is just one of the hoodies he left here. He crashes sometimes. But he's been staying somewhere else lately." "Where?" She shrugged. "Didn't say. Something about needing space." Then came the worst part. The part that made my throat close up. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Honestly, he's been acting really off. Like, haunted. Said something about a party? Said you embarrassed him?" I felt my cheeks burn. She leaned forward. "He never told me what happened, but he said something weird. He said, I kept waiting for him to save me, but he was too busy trying to win. Does that make sense to you?" I think I blacked out for a moment, because it made too much sense. It was exactly what I'd been doing, trying to win every argument, every apology, every narrative. And in doing that, I never noticed he'd stopped playing the game altogether. But then she added something else, something that made my stomach drop completely. He left behind an envelope. He said I shouldn't open it. Said if someone ever came asking, I should give it to them. She walked over to a drawer, pulled it out, and handed it to me. No name, just my initials in his handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a receipt. From a lawyer. Retainer paid in full. Divorce attorney. Dated 3 weeks before the party. I don't remember the drive home. I must have stopped at a red light or two because I didn't die, but I couldn't tell you what route I took. I had Everett's envelope sitting on the passenger seat like it was a live grenade. Retainer paid. 3 weeks before the party. 3 weeks before I gave him that stupid ultimatum in front of everyone. So he'd already made his decision before I humiliated him. He was just waiting. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I left him, or if he had already left me and was just polite enough to let me think it was my idea. When I got home, I stared at the envelope again. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen earlier because I'd been too blinded by panic. On the back, written lightly in pencil, almost like an afterthought, was a name. A first name only. Kenton. I read it twice. 3 times. Kenton. Not a name I recognized. Not a friend. Not a coworker. Not a family member. Not mine, anyway. So why would Everett scribble that name on the back of a lawyer's retainer? My stomach turned in a way that felt different this time. Not betrayal. Something colder. Something like realization. Everett had help. And then I made a mistake. I searched our shared photo library. I typed Kenton. One result. A group picture from a Halloween party 2 years ago. One of Everett's work events. Everyone in costume. I had been dressed as a stressed-out barista. Hilarious, I know. Everett was a vampire or a magician or something equally dramatic. And next to him, a tall guy, dressed as some kind of knight or soldier, arm loosely around Everett's shoulder, flashing a big, easy smile. Under the photo, Everett had captioned it, "Kenton slayed the costume game." I never even looked at it twice before. Now I couldn't stop staring. I zoomed in. There it was. The way Everett leaned into him. The ease in their posture. The closeness. I had been in the photo too, off to the side, half blinking, holding a plastic sword like a prop. The whole thing looked like a joke now, like I'd been invited to a scene I didn't understand. I went further, found a string of texts buried in our old thread. Everett had screenshotted a meme and sent it to me. I remembered brushing it off, saying, "Not funny." But right above it, I saw a name I'd ignored at the time. "Just had lunch with Kenton. He's thinking of moving out west." I never replied to that one. Never asked who Kenton was. Never cared enough to be curious. And now here I was, trying to reconstruct a puzzle I didn't even know was being built under my nose. So I called Everett. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Instead, I did what every desperate idiot does when he's been left behind but still thinks he deserves answers. I called one of Everett's coworkers. Not even a close one. Just someone I remembered from one of his work barbecues. Her name was Lacey. She liked white wine and talked too much. I knew she'd give me something. She always did. When I asked her who Kenton was, she hesitated, then said, "I thought you knew." I said nothing. She continued, voice lower now, like she was telling me a bedtime story I wouldn't sleep through. Kenton was Everett's college roommate, but they reconnected a couple years ago. There were rumors. Not my business. But Everett was different around him. Happier. Nervous, even. I always thought you two had an understanding. My throat dried instantly. She finished with, "He moved to Portland last month. But Everett didn't go with him. I thought that was your doing." I hung up, walked to the bathroom, stared at myself in the mirror. The man looking back at me looked like a ghost. Eyes bloodshot, face slack. A man trying to pretend he hadn't spent 6 years in a relationship where someone else quietly fell for another man, while he was too busy controlling the narrative to notice. But the part that made my knees go weak? The realization that Kenton wasn't the betrayal. I was. Because maybe Everett had tried. Maybe he had dropped hints, asked for help, reached out with shaky hands and tired words. And maybe I mocked them, laughed them off, gave him ultimatums instead of affection. And maybe he left me the kindest way he knew how, slowly, quietly, and without burning the bridge, in case I ever woke up and saw what I'd done. But by the time I noticed, he was already gone. I stayed home all weekend, jumping at every sound outside like some panicked squirrel. I thought he'd show up, Everett. I thought maybe seeing his name on my missed calls list would wear him down, that the guilt or the history or something would drag him back to face me. But nothing happened. Just the soft thud of Sunday passing by without a knock, without a message, without even a change to the shared calendar. Monday evening, I gave up waiting and took a shower, trying to scrub off the anxiety that had clung to me for days. And of course, right when I turned off the water, I heard the doorbell. I froze, toweled off in a frenzy, threw on whatever clothes I found on the floor, ran to the door. It wasn't Everett. It was a woman, not much older than me. Short hair, tan coat, thin lips pressed together like she wasn't sure if she should be doing this. "You're Daryl, right?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "Do I know you?" "I'm Kenton's sister." Everything in my chest dropped. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "He asked me to deliver this." Everett asked. "Said if you started digging after the separation, I should give it to you." I just stood there, water dripping from my hair onto the floor. She placed it in my hand. "He didn't want to ghost you. He just knew you'd try to twist everything." I blinked. "I didn't twist." She tilted her head. "Didn't you?" Then she left. I shut the door slowly, the envelope shaking in my hand. It wasn't thick, just a few papers inside. I opened it at the kitchen table, under the same light where Everett and I used to eat frozen lasagna and argue over documentaries. There were 2 things inside. One was a printed list, a bullet point breakdown of every conversation he had tried to have with me over the past 8 months. Each one had a date, what he said, and how I responded. It was brutal. February 19th. I said I felt lonely. You joked that I should marry my sadness then. April 3rd. I asked if we could do therapy. You asked if I was feeling dramatic again. June 9th. I cried. You told me to cry quieter. I stopped halfway through. The second paper was a photo of me, asleep on the couch, and Everett, behind me, holding the camera, looking at me with this expression I didn't understand. It wasn't love. It wasn't hate. It looked like grief. like he was already mourning the end of something that hadn't ended yet. The photo stayed on the table all night. I couldn't throw it away, couldn't move it, just stared at it like it might change if I looked long enough. Everett, standing behind me, frozen in time, looking at me like I was already gone. It haunted me more than anything he ever said, more than the silence, more than the fact he planned his exit so quietly. What terrified me was how long he'd been emotionally gone while I kept thinking everything was just a rough patch. I barely slept. I kept going back and forth in my head, trying to find the moment I stopped being his person. I replayed arguments, pauses, shoulder shrugs. Every time he'd ask, "Can we talk?" and I'd sigh or roll my eyes or say I was tired. I didn't realize how often I made him small until now. I didn't realize how often I made myself the victim when I was actually the knife. The next morning, I remembered something stupid. Everett kept a little blue notebook in the drawer under the Wi-Fi router. Said he liked to write down passwords because he didn't trust cloud nonsense. At first, I don't know why I even wanted to look at it. Maybe I thought I'd find a code to a secret email or some message he never sent. But what I found was worse than anything I imagined. Between logins and account names, there were little notes, dates, scribbled thoughts, tiny confessions. Don't cry in the kitchen today. He won't notice if you skip dinner. Try to bring up therapy again, shut down. Again. And then this one. If I leave, don't let him think it was because of Kenton. It wasn't. It was because I didn't feel safe being vulnerable anymore. My hand shook reading that. I used to think vulnerability meant he was being dramatic. I used to think him crying was some guilt tactic. I used to tell him to man up, like a coward who couldn't handle someone else's emotions because I didn't want to face my own. But the worst part? Taped to the back of the notebook was a sticky note, folded in half, written in his neat, almost too careful handwriting. If he ever opens this, he's finally ready to see it. I didn't want to open it, but I did. Inside, just a single sentence. You were never supposed to become your father. I dropped it. I backed away like it was burning my hands. Because that was a wound deeper than any fight we'd ever had. I spent years swearing I'd never turn into the cold, distant man who raised me. The one who treated emotions like they were weakness. The one who walked out on my mom during a silent breakfast and never came back. But Everett had seen it before I did. He had been with me while I transformed into everything I hated. And instead of trying to fix me, he finally chose to save himself. I spent 2 hours rewriting a message I didn't even think he'd read. I kept it short, didn't beg, didn't accuse, just said, I found the notebook. I get it now. I'm sorry. Really I am. I hesitated before hitting send, knowing full well it would probably land in the same black hole as the others. But something in me needed to say it, not to get him back. That ship had already exploded and sunk. I just needed him to know I finally saw it, saw me, the way he had seen me for years. The message stayed on delivered. No read receipt. No reply. A few hours later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was spam, until I opened it. Hey, it's Kenton. I saw your message. Everett asked me to handle his phone for a while. He's taking space, like real space. Somewhere off-grid. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I figured you deserve to know he read it. I stared at the screen so long the light dimmed and went dark. That should have been the end of it. But Kenton sent one more message. One I don't think he meant to send, or maybe he did, and that's what makes it worse. He cried when he saw it. Said, too late, but at least he finally looked in the mirror. I dropped the phone, not threw it, just dropped it, like my hands gave up on holding anything anymore. Because there it was, not rage, not resentment, just resignation. The kind of pain that doesn't scream. It just sits inside you, quietly rotting every memory you thought was still intact. I didn't respond. What could I say? Tell him I cried too? Tell him I finally missed the way he used to sigh before saying something important? Tell him I didn't mean to ruin us. I just didn't know how to be better? Instead, I went to the drawer by my bedside, dug through the mess of chargers, old receipts, loose change, pulled out the little keepsake box Everett gave me our second Christmas. Inside were old movie stubs, the first photo booth strip we ever took, and a folded paper star he made on a boring flight home from a wedding. Tucked beneath all that was a note. I never opened it before. He told me it was for later. I'd always assumed it was romantic. Something to read on our 10th anniversary or during some dumb game where we wrote letters to our future selves. But the moment I unfolded it, I realized it was neither. It read, "If you're reading this, you probably let your pride win again. But I want you to know, I loved you in the moments you never noticed. I loved you when you were distracted, defensive, loud, tired, wrong. I just stopped knowing how to survive it." I put the note down, and I finally cried like I meant it. It's strange how quiet a house feels after you stop waiting for someone to come back. At first, the silence used to scream. Every room reminded me of what I lost. The coffee mugs still paired up in the cupboard like I was too scared to separate them. His favorite blanket folded over the couch arm like he might return to pull it over himself. Even the coat he left in the hallway, I couldn't move it for weeks, as if touching it would erase him for good. But eventually, the quiet stopped feeling like a punishment. It started feeling like permission. I went back to therapy. Real therapy. Not the 3 sessions I used to roll my eyes through while I waited to feel right again. No, this time I showed up messy. Showed up crying. Showed up honest. And yeah, I hated it at first. I hated facing the mirror Everett had been trying to hold up for years. I hated knowing he had been begging me to see him, while I was too busy being right all the time. But I didn't stop. I talked. I wrote. I deleted the calendar we used to share, not out of spite, but because I finally understood that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means letting go of the version of yourself that made someone else feel unloved, and building someone new who's capable of more. I never saw Everett again. But one day, about 6 months after he left, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single Polaroid. A photo of a cabin. Trees all around it. A porch with 2 chairs. On the back, he wrote, "This is where I remembered how to breathe again. I hope you're learning to do the same. No, I miss you. No, let's talk. Just peace. Closure. A soft, honest kindness that no longer carried the weight of resentment." I stood there in my hallway, holding the photo, and for the first time in years, I smiled without guilt. He didn't come back, but I did. To myself. To the person I was always afraid to become. Vulnerable, soft, fully present. And maybe that's the most painful kind of happy ending. The one where you don't get the love back, but you become someone who finally knows how to give it right.